Hey guys, Freddy here. Welcome back to another Retro Adventures. Because at the end of another week, the end of another poll, we've got a very comfortable win for the Ghost Tower of Inverness for Dungeons & Dragons. Now this is going to be a PDF review, so we'll be going over to the computer desktop in a wee second to have a look at that. And as usual, I'll be back at the end of the video with some other channel related stuff and some other poll related stuff. But before I do that, I'd like to take a moment to talk about my Patreons, who are wonderful, wonderful people who make all of this possible. So I'd like to thank them from the absolute bottom of my heart. Their efforts are so much appreciated. Now if you'd like to join them and help support the channel, and I sure wish you would, or you'd like to see these videos a week early, or you'd like to see the Patreon exclusive videos that we put up over there, or one of the other levels of patronage we've got, then there's a Patreon in the description down below. If you check it out, it'd be very much appreciated. But anyway, let's have a look at the Ghost Tower of Inverness. So, this is Dungeon Module C2, the Ghost Tower of Inverness, which came out for Advanced Dungeons & Dragons from TSR in 1980. And it's part of the C series of modules, which stands for competitive, so it's a tournament module. Now I have to say, I've played through this, and I actually won the competition, but we'll come to that later. And as such, it was a very, very enjoyable game. As a competitive module, it's based less about role-playing, not so much about combat, but far more about tricks, puzzles, things you can work out to show who's the best player using their mind, rather than who's the most charismatic, who's the best at rolling dice, although rolling dice is actually how I won. Anyway, on the cover here, a shadow from the past, the Ghost Tower of Inverness has loomed ever larger in the mind of the great Seer of Urnst. Now he's convinced the Duke that an expedition should be organised to go to the ancient keep and recover its greatest treasure, this fabled soul gem. This module was originally written for the official Advanced Dungeons & Dragons game tournament at Wintercon VIII, held in Detroit in November of 1979. It's second in TSR's competitive series, modules that were used in official tournaments. This module contains a challenging setting, a scoring system, and characters specially designed for the adventure. It may thus be used for competition amongst players, or groups of players, or as a non-scored adventure including an ongoing campaign. Also included within the background information, referees' maps and notes, encounter descriptions of players, and a background scenario linked to the world of Greyhawk fantasy world setting. If you find this module intriguing, look for the TSR logo on future publications from the Games Wizards. So, that's kind of setting up what it is. The players are sent to the Ghost Tower of Inverness to retrieve the fabled soul gem by the Duke. And there's not much more that can be said about that. The setting is a castle with a ghostly tower that is sometimes seen. As I said, the adventure itself, it's very much a dungeon bash. There's very little role-playing, than perhaps the initial setup, but not much there at all. Maybe some between the players, because you are using pre-generated characters from the main, but there's a bunch of combat in here, and there's some very interesting tricks and traps, which are worth looking through. Even if you're going to run the adventure, there's a lot of really interesting stuff to put in here for your campaign. And that's us leaving spoiler territory. So, if you don't want spoilers for this, this is where you're going to be turning off. So, delving inside. Final comment, the cover image doesn't really sell me on it. It's nice enough, but far reach from some of the brilliant artwork we've seen in the past. So, inside we get the map of the first dungeon level. So we'll come to the castle above. But when you enter the castle, it's a standard castle with 4 towers in the corners and staircases leading down. And in the middle there's a big pile of rubble where the tower once stood, where people occasionally think they see the tower still, mystically appearing. Although it really doesn't explain that in the adventure. All of the 4 towers lead down to a small dungeon with various puzzles, which leads on to one of the doors around this side. All of the doors require 4 keys, so it doesn't matter which route you go, because 1 key is picked up in each route. And what it's going to need you to do is complete all 4 get to the door get to these doors 4 times, finding the key, until eventually you've got all 4 keys going when you go down the 4th route, and you gain access to this room. And then this room allows you to access the Ghost Tower itself. Now, I totally misunderstood when I was playing it what was going on in room 15 in the centre here. But as I said, we'll come on to that. Inside we've got a duplicate of the front page, although with a different image. Some kind of carrion crawler or something. And this adventure does use very standard monsters. We've got the background for the Ghost Tower of Inverness. The module background, lots of information about the soul gem, and how it leads in. And we've got the scoring guidelines. Now, the scoring guidelines are how I won, because number 1 here is add up the number of hit points inflicted. And I was playing the wizard character, who had access to Fireball. And I let it off in a situation where there weren't a lot of high-powered monsters, but we were clustered around by a lot of low hit point monsters, which I wiped out masses of. And the number of hit points inflicted clocked up for me to lots and lots of points, especially when some of the players were caught in the blast area as well and took some damage. So I won by a vast amount from killing all these little monsters, but also from doing some damage to the other players. Not a fair way, but it's a tournament, that's what it's about. But we've got different methods of scoring here. Subtract from this the number of hit points received. Under this, the combat scoring on the DM scoring sheet, subjective score, etc., etc. We've got a talk through of non-tournament play. And then we've got the tournament background. So the players are all, or apart from one of them, are all criminals who are given the chance to go on this mission to get out. And the Duke releases them from there. They've got no equipment because they're in prison, but they get a certain amount of gold pieces and access to his armory to transfer that into equipment, healing potions, magical weapons, etc. So you get quite a good setup and a balanced way of what your characters get. So we talk through the different characters. So the wizard, which I played, was Hodar. You dared to defy a royal order and continued to dabble in sorceries. Zenithar. Your wisdom must have left you when you decided to lead an ill-fated temple coalition revolt these 3 months past. Diskink. Your rash daring and bravado is to be marvelled at. When you tried to steal the crown jewels. On top, Sergeant Norlick and his men were out on patrol. Lihon is the only one who should not spend any time in prison because she's in a monastery, but service has been offered up because they haven't paid taxes. Did I miss somebody there? Linbu. Thought better to slay a captain of the guard in a barroom fight, never mind the 11 guardsmen you killed while arrest. That's the 5th one. So they're all in jail for different things, even if one of them's just being offered up to cover taxes. But that will free them from service anyway. And we've got wandering monsters, so very standard ones: giant ants, giant badgers, bombardier beetles, horned devils, doppelgangers, gelatinous cubes, etc., etc. Very, very standard monsters. And then we're on to the keep. So we go through the different locations. So outside we've got the gateway, the rubble in the centre where the tower once existed. So this is magically enchanted because the tower was magical, and the tower that you're trying to search doesn't exist anymore, or at least not in this time. We've got the tower doors, staircase landings, the monster squares. Player steps on a numbered square, the following should be read, and a monster appears. So we can see different squares as they pass through the room. It's a very small room with 2 doors. Both the entrance and exit both allow 1 monster, a hellhound. Oh, you random roll randomly, sorry. I thought they were different because there's 6 boxes and 6 on there. But you go from hellhounds, rust monsters, spitting snakes. We've got the bugbear room. And this trap one is whenever somebody enters or exits the room through either of the entrances, some of the monsters are activated. I think it's 2. No, 4 will animate. So the statues of bugbears, 16 in total, but every time somebody enters or exits the room, 4 of them activate. So if you send people across, 4 will activate, and then as they exit, another 4. And you can end up getting swarmed by the monsters, obviously, if everybody just charges into the room. Rubble room, illusory ball, crystal pedestal, tunnel rooms, bead curtains, the chess room, where you have to move across it in a chess-like fashion. You can see the small image down here. So you have to move through it in chess moves. A must move like a rook, B and E must move like knights, C must move like a king, and D must move like a bishop. So depending on which one you're going through. We've got the bugbear room mapped out, the chessboard room mapped out, some nice images. This is part of the tower later on, one of the levels. Another levels, which is the level of water, where again my wizard did awfully well, because swimming in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons is more based about what armor you're wearing. So all the fighter types who are wearing leather armor, metal armor, etc., all could not swim. Whereas my wizard in his robes was absolutely fine. He was moving around great, which in my head he was an elderly wizard, but he swam like a fish. It was great. The final room with the gemstone and an effect which moves around the different sectors. We've got the stats, so we've got the fighter, the cleric, the magic user, cleric, the thief, and the ducal prices. So you can see you can buy like a ring of protection +3 for 18,000. A sword +3 frostbrand. Lots and lots of different magical items you can buy to equip yourselves with, or you can buy up a bunch of potions, scrolls of healing, etc. Different armor and potions. Evil dragon control potion. Bracers. So you can armor your characters up pretty well, equip them to where they should be, because they're starting with nothing. Allows you to go on a shopping trip first of all. What else we got? Statue and the central room. So once you've got all 4 keys, you've gone through all the different branches, you've gone through all the puzzles, you can open the doors and you enter a central room. And inside it, once you go in, there are some chairs. And once everybody's in, the chairs or the room changes, and it feels like there's extra gravity. So you're comfortable if you're in a chair, but if you're still standing around, you get crushed to the floor. Colours swirl before your eyes, your stomachs churn, and suddenly the pressure stops. You notice that a 5-foot diameter hole has entered in the centre of the ceiling. It was not there before. With circular entrances and everybody getting crushed to the floor, I thought we were in a rocket, and that the Ghost Tower had been the plume as the rocket had been going up into space, and people had seen it from a distance. I thought we were into some kind of technological thing, and we were going to be going into a space station through a circular airlock. It's not, it's time travel. You go into the room and you're travelling back into time to the point before the tower was destroyed. And you can then explore the tower back in history. It totally threw me. I totally thought we were into one of those Dungeons & Dragons adventures where we had space travel and laser guns and things like that, but I was totally wrong. Anyway, continuing. So we've got the Ghost Tower itself, and we go through the different levels. So we've got the air level, where winged creatures go at you, and you have to get through it. There's a staircase to the earth level, where you get attacked by strange monkeys. The fire level, where you've got flame creatures and a fire giant to beat. There's a reverse gravity area, where you float up to the exit which is in the ceiling,
and then you go through that and you go into warm water. You fall into a warm, 15-foot deep, salty sea green water. Struggling to stay on the surface, you can see a small island with sand and 2 palm trees to the left, and behind you, coral several feet high grows on the bottom of the sea. So this is where characters wearing armor had, and there's rules for how you can swim. We've got fish in the water, the island, a hatchway. I'm not even going to try and pronounce that. No, I said I wasn't going to. A lair. And then we're into the jewel room. And as it said, white light moves around the room, killing everything in certain sectors. So there's 8 sectors, and you have to break through into the gem to get the soul gem. So you're trying to work out what pattern this white light's going out in. When the white light strikes the victim, he or she screams horribly, a long drawn-out wailing scream. As your vision clears, the image of the character, pale and ghostly, streams out of the body towards the soul gem, getting smaller the nearer it gets. As the image shrinks in size, the volume of the scream diminishes. When it reaches the gem, there is a burst of radiance, and the image is gone. The character's form lies motionless on the floor. The body is dead white, as are all the character's possessions. So, you've got to get access to it. Once you break through, doing 100 hit points. I can't see off the top of my head. Once you've broken through to the soul gem, you can grab the soul gem. You've been given by the Duke an amulet of recall. Whoever activates the amulet of recall will teleport back with whatever they're holding, so the whole gem hopefully, and anybody touching them. So the party can grab onto that person and instantly get transported through time and space back to the Duke. I find it a bit odd that the amulet allows you to travel in time as well. Nice that the Duke was well prepared for that, but that's what happens. And if the party successfully teleports back to the Seer, they will be congratulated on their success, and told, because of the familiarity of the soul gem, the Seer can locate the exact facet where the souls of the party members are, and return them to their own bodies if they were recovered, or less happily, to other bodies if necessary. So any dead characters can be recovered. We've got the credits there, we've got stats for the Firebat, we've got the map of the Upper Ruins. As I said, there's the 4 towers and the big pile of rubble in the centre, but not much to be explored in the surface part of the castle itself. Got the Dungeon Master's record sheet for what each character has and their bonuses. We've got their scoring sheet, turn record. We've got the maps of the air level, the earth level, the fire level, the water level, and then the jewel room itself. You can see we enter in an air level. There's not much around there, just the attacks. The earth level, there's a series of tunnels. Fire level, there's platforms where you get harassed by different monsters and a fire giant over some lava. The water level, where you've got to swim around, and there's a small island. And then you finally get into the jewel room with the different sectors, which are zapped by the white light, and you get your soul stolen if you get hit by it. And that's us taken onto the back cover, which is basically just a list of other things you can buy. So, Dungeon Module C2, the Ghost Tower of Inverness. As I said, there's a lot of really interesting puzzles in here, tricks, traps, and stuff to make the players think. I can't see it being really useful in a non-campaign setting, although they do allow characters to be resurrected because that final trap is so deadly. I can't remember how many players we lost, but we managed to get through anyway. I think we brought the dead bodies along with us, so everybody got restored to their bodies at the very end. It wasn't a terrible adventure, it was a lot of fun, and I'm not just saying that because I won. There's a lot of really nice ideas in here, so it's definitely worth a look through, even if you don't intend to run it.
So, that was the Ghost Tower of Inverness, and that won the poll this week with a very comfortable 39% of the vote, which was way ahead of everything else, because in second place on 29% was Dark Angel for Shadowrun. Behind that, on 20%, was Decision at Midnight for the Star Trek role-playing game. And way back behind was Into the Ruins Scenario Pack 1 for Aftermath on only 12%. But as usual, they're all wiped out the poll, and we're going back to a retro RPG poll. But I'm going to be doing some Dungeons & Dragons based stuff, so I'm steering clear of Dungeons & Dragons for the moment. So these are a few things from my collection on my shelf while I get these other things done, which I'll come on to in a moment. So the new poll is opened, and first up we've got Dwarfs at Stone and Steel for Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay from Hogshead Publishing in 2002. Now this is a race book. It's about the dwarves, funnily enough, and fleshing them out. I don't know much more about it. It was one of a series that we were going to bring out, but Hogshead didn't stay in publishing for too much longer after this. But the quality of stuff they did was absolutely fantastic, as we've seen in the past. After that, we've got the Adept's Way for Earthdawn from Faza in 1995. Now, Earthdawn's one of my favourite role-playing settings, an absolutely great game. I'd love to cover it again. In it, everybody is magical. Whether you are a wizard, whether you're a fighter, or whether you're a baker. If you're a baker, you're taking the magic of the world and you're weaving it into your work, creating bread which will heal more than anything. Everybody is magical in a way, but the adepts, the player characters, the wizards, the warriors, all of the others, thieves even, know how to weave magic in special ways. So the Adept's Way is dealing with that and showing how everything works in this more magical world. After that, we've got Terror Counter Terror for Millennium's End from Chameleon Eclectic in 1996. Now, I keep putting stuff from Millennium's End in. It was all brilliantly published, a fantastic, great idea, an almost cyberpunk game. But I don't think it will do well. I think I'm just going to have to cover what Millennium's End books I've got in my collection and show it off without putting in the polls anymore. But let's give it this chance. I recommend it. They really did some great work in there, and the people who were behind it went on to do fantastic work in the future, way up to this day. And after that, we've got The Secrets of Shadowloo for the Street Fighter role-playing game from White Wolf in 1994. Now, Street Fighter is a fantastic game. Really, really odd for White Wolf for them to be doing a game based on a beat-em-up at the same time they were bringing out all the World of Darkness stuff. You know, you can be doing how cursed you are as a vampire, how doomed the world is as werewolf, or you can be punching people in the face in Street Fighter, basically using the same rule set, the storyteller system. And there was fantastic stuff. If you like the Street Fighter arcade game, this fleshed out the world wonderfully. There was so much great stuff in it, and I highly recommend it. I would love to cover more from it. When we've covered some Street Fighter stuff in the past, we've had a good time, and it's well worth it. But that's the choices. Let's see what wins. Now, as I was saying, I'm going to be covering some Dungeons & Dragons stuff. I've had some ideas for some series I'm going to go on to, where I'm doing some more rules-based stuff. But it's about different editions of role-playing games. And what it occurred to me is, I haven't covered 4th edition Dungeons & Dragons, and I don't think it will do well in the poll. So I'm just going to make some videos. I'll cover the Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual probably, and go over the basics of the system. I'll do a rules breakdown, and then we can go on to other things. Also, I've been on a bit of a binge at the moment over the different settings. So in the past, the only setting I've really covered, because the really good thing about 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons was the variety of different settings you could get for it. And I think there were 13 settings I've come up with, and I've really only covered one of them to any depth, which was Dark Sun when I covered the box set of it. I've covered some Forgotten Realms stuff as well, so we could kind of consider that. But that still leaves 11 settings for 2nd edition Dungeons & Dragons I haven't covered. Things like Ravenloft, Mastica, Al-Qadim. These would all be wonderful to cover. And some rarer ones that I have very little knowledge about. I would love to cover Hollow World. But it doesn't seem fair to put these into polls against one another. So, in the future at some point, I will be doing a series of videos where I cover the initial box set for each of these settings. So there'll be 12 videos introducing 12 different worlds. Now obviously this is going to be a lot of reading and a lot of research while I learn up on these settings and pick up all the different things. I might even, as part of this, return to Dark Sun because it was one of my first videos way back over 5 years ago now. I think covering the original, because the box set I had was the enhanced one, The version they released once Dark Sun had become quite popular, and it added some stuff to the world. But there was the original box set as well, which I thought was absolutely classic, and I think it's well worth looking into. Especially in these days when Dark Sun is seen as being a bit of a dodgy thing to cover. I would love to touch on some of the controversy around it. But that's what I'm going to be doing over the next few months, in addition to the usual polls, in addition to some of the other series I've got going on. So it's not going to be every week, but I've got about 12 or 13 different settings to cover. I've got 4th edition to cover, so there's a lot of Dungeons & Dragons stuff to come. So I probably won't be putting it in the poll, because obviously I don't want that to become the focus of my channel. So in the polls, like we've just seen, there'll be a lot of other games. I'm going to be touching on all of these other games that are in my collection that I love, but there's going to be a lot of Dungeons & Dragons stuff going on in the future. Anyway, I think I've been wittering on for quite long enough because I've really drawn this out. So thank you for watching to the end. And, as always, you look after yourselves, and I'll catch you later. Bye now.